So before the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, it brings together 12 of the largest oil and gas companies in the world. We've been around for 10 years, so it includes Exxon, Chevron, OXY, all of the European majors, so TotalEnergies and BP, of course, but also importantly Aramco and CNPC of China. The purpose of OGCI has always been to bring those companies together to say, what can we do to lower emissions and catalyze climate action within the industry? And from the get-go, methane was singled out as something very, very important. Because as you said, Anish, that is a big price. And if you look at the International Panel on Climate Change, they actually rank as methane emissions from oil and gas leakages as being second to solar deployment, wind deployment, more important on the climate impact than all electric cars by 2030. So it's estimated to be maybe 2.4 gigaton of CO2 emissions, CO2 equivalents, is the methane emissions. So methane is a gas with no odor, it's invisible. But due to the progress made over the last years, we now have the technology to literally see methane leaks. We have the technology to understand the sources of leakages. And also, I think we've changed the mindset of the industry towards a zero tolerance mindset on methane. So I believe we're at a very different place than only a few years ago. And it's a unique opportunity to do large-scale climate action. Right. At the same time, to lower the energy losses. Okay. Because methane leaks, at the end of the day, is an energy loss. And in a world where we need all the energy and there is energy poverty, avoiding leakages is important.
So just to follow on to that, then, we had the global methane pledge at the COP. How's the uptake been after that? Has it changed the discourse?
So to me, a very important source of optimism is that the 12 OGCI members have been able to reduce, since 2017 only, their methane emissions with 50%. More than 50% reduction in 6 years. So it's very important, very impressive. Now we're seeing that we're able to take that kind of coalition that we built from 12 to a coalition of 55 companies, including the bigger Indian national gas companies. So now I think we have an opportunity now to act on this methane challenge that we have never had before. So quite optimistic, actually, that we can do tangible progress. And the aim is to get to near zero methane emissions from this industry already by 2030.
Right. I'm going to go over to you, Ashish, and ask you about this. And again, a little bit of introduction to you about what you do, because that's best done by you. And then from the industry standpoint, because you're representing the E&P industry in that sense, okay, how do you see the practicality of some of these things? What are the key challenges? And what's the way forward for you?
Yeah, it's good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for inviting me for this session. I think on the panel, I am the only one representing the E&P operators in India, so I will speak on behalf of them. But before that, I represent a company which is engaged in production of coal-based methane. We are the highest coal-based methane producers in India, and we are focused on the unconventional sources of gas and oil. But at the same time, I would like to start with the statement that every molecule of methane mitigated or saved by us is going to add to my top line, to my revenue. So it is in the best interest of companies like us to not to allow the methane to go into the air as a fugitive methane and lose the value, because it has a value, and India is gas-starved company, so we are almost importing more than 50% of our gas requirement from abroad. And As per the government's guidelines also, as a part of the primary energy mix, the government of India has given us target to increase the share of gas as transition fuel from 6%, which is present, to 15%. So these challenges are quite a bit, and certainly methane is less polluting than coal and oil, so that's why the targets have come. So, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind the fact that methane is almost 28 times more potent than CO2. We have been talking about the CO2 capture and about the effect on environment. But I'm happy that for the first time, methane is being discussed separately on this platform, and you can't have a better platform than IEW to discuss this challenge which is coming to the industry. I only wish that somebody from the coal producer side also should have been part of this, because if I say that coal is still meeting almost 50% requirement of primary energy in India, and we know that it's a dirty fuel, but due to some whatever commercial considerations, the dependency on coal is still around 50%. So, and as was stated by Anish in the beginning, coal is one of the largest source of methane and fugitive methane in terms of the coal mine methane, abandoned mine methane. So when I come back to my the company, the job which we are doing, we are producing the coal-bed methane, and coal-bed methane production has been identified as the first step before you start mining the coal, to degasify the mines before. So it has double benefit for everybody. The companies can degasify the mine. You can sell the gas to the companies which are utilizing gas. At the same time, the risk of fugitive gas which goes in the atmosphere in the process of coal mining also can be reduced to substantially. But can it be essentially done before starting any mining activity? Because coal mining has been happening in this India and the world since more than centuries. And you know how much methane we would have almost gone to this atmosphere by now. So, and looking at the ambitious coal production targets for India, it looks really challenging. That can we make it really mandatory to start with CBM and then go for the mining? I do not know. The governments have to decide, and the people have to ponder upon that. Well, coming back to oil and gas industry per se, of course, leakage detection, and in case of oil, the detection from the installations, the oil reservoirs, the tankers, is a major challenge. Because we have huge length of cross-country pipelines, interfield pipelines, and each joint has a potent target for methane emission, methane loss. So that is something which is all the oil and gas companies are doing. We per se, we are also doing that, the digital monitoring of all the leakages. We are trying to minimize it, because I told you each molecule saved is a revenue for me. So that we are trying to do, and their technologies, I think we will talk about that also. We are trying to use optical imaging cameras, and also this morning only I had a discussion with a company who can provide us the satellite-based data from the imaging we can process, because the data is there on the cloud, and we have to process it with some input, so that you can come to the level of almost 20 meters by 20 meters grid. You can identify the gas leak. But of course, these things will come at a cost, and are the oil and gas companies are ready to absorb their cost in their balance sheet? I am not in a position
we'll
to
come back
comment
to
at
that
the moment,
question,
at the
because
moment.
I think I want
And
to
how
ask Bjørn that
and how the
question.
governments can support here through the policy guidelines, through the incentives. Again, this is something to be debated.
We'll come back to both those
Yes,
themes,
yes.
the technology and the policy theme. But before we do that, Hisham, we can't grant Ashish his wish of having somebody from the coal mining industry here. But I know that you and the Environmental Defense Fund have done quite a bit of studies around this to understand, the mining, the emissions from mining, storage, consumption. So your opening comments.
Sure, thanks. So I'm with the Environmental Defense Fund. It's a intimidating sounding name for an organization, but I promise we're a really sweet NGO. We just use a hell of a lot of science in everything that we do. Why is methane important? 30% of the increasing temperatures on the planet are on account of methane, right? The fastest way to slow down rising temperatures is to cut methane emissions now. If we were to do this, we could reduce 0.1%, 0.1 degree by 2050. That is the opportunity that is there on just this one particular gas. The title here is about ensuring yields, without affecting costs. And the beauty in the oil and gas sector is methane has that opportunity. If I just give an illustration with some Indian numbers, the Indian oil and gas sector could reduce 65% of the methane leakages at zero net cost. 70% of it is technically feasible, as in with existing technology. Sometimes to non-oil and gas audiences, I describe it as the solution is as simple as tightening the valve and then closing the hatch. It's leakage detection. So that's certainly there. And in terms of the overall economic case, India stands to gain $240 million a year through savings. And this is recurring. $240 million a year through recurring savings on reduced methane emissions. If we spent the equivalent of $160 million a year till 2030, 240 is, perpetuity. To 2030 is 160 million. That's kind of the cost economics. Let me just add one additional dimension. If you look at the Indian context and methane emissions, 20% of it come from energy, 20% of that is from gas. So why should we care about 20% of 20%? It's effectively 4%, right? It doesn't seem like a big amount. We need to care about it for two reasons. One is that from an oil and gas sector's perspective, investor after investor are beginning to look at what is the decarbonization roadmap for the sector. And they see methane as a huge opportunity, as the first step to take. And therefore, in boardrooms, you will hear investors talk more and more about it. There is an opportunity for us to fix the problem in India, but there's also an opportunity for our imported gas. Currently, we import half the gas that we need. India, the energy mix, 6% is gas. It's projected, as Anish said, to go to 15%. 30% of global gas growth is going to come from India. And so India can play an equally effective role by joining buyers clubs or setting import standards at no additional costs. That's the beauty of it.
Thank you. And I mean, for somebody who's been in the oil and gas industry for a while, gas loss is something which we track, but it's tracked as an engineering metric, yes, rather than a management metric. And that's the problem. And I think it has to become a boardroom metric, by which we have to go towards the zero target, which we have set out. And many Indian companies have also joined. One of the things which, Bjørn, I'll come to you, one of the things which we have a challenge on is a disconnect between what you see as reported data versus what is observed from satellite data. There's a big disconnect. Okay. Why the disconnect, and are you seeing those two converge now?
So yeah, I think as technology becomes more widespread and available to both better detect and understand the methane leaks, you will see a movement from estimation-based reporting towards more monitor data. But for many companies, they're not even doing the estimations. Right. So because they're just ignoring that theme. So I think let's get everybody on board to first recognize the importance of the challenge, as my colleagues talked about here, the global warming potential of methane, the feasibility of solving it, and then the mindset of aiming towards near zero methane emissions. And then we know, you can also say, we don't need perfect reports, but if you have a close eye on a couple of main important sources, you're going to start doing fairly good. So have an eye on venting. First, do you do direct venting on methane? That's much better to do flaring. And if you do flaring, make sure that that kind of flare is working very well with a high degree of combustion.
Yeah.
Many flares don't do that. And then you can go to the next type of main category, storage tank batteries. Typically for oil, when temperature drops overnight, you have a vapor. Make sure you have a vapor recovery system.
Right.
And then there are some infrastructure, and typically that's about good maintenance policies. Make sure that you have a good monitoring and you plan maintenance and do repair in time. So with those three kind of main rules,
Yes.
you can solve probably 60-70% of the challenge. So to me, sometimes I find the discussion around reporting being very focused on some backward-looking number. But I think we need to call upon all the engineers in the companies that would like to have well-run operations and call upon them to say, look, you need to have your eye on those three things and define it as part of good operations. And I'm sure my colleague here.
Yeah, let's go to Ashish then in that case. Do you have your eyes on those three things, or what else do you have your eye on as you look at abatement?
Actually, I was about to mention that. You see, as per when we start, we talk about reporting, as per the UNFCCC the convention, India reported around 800,000 tons of methane emission in 2019. But we certainly believe that it's not the, and well, fingers crossed that this is not the correct, should not be the correct figure. We as operators, the leak detection and remedy is the first and foremost the primary thing to be done. Whether you do it with using a soap solution, which is a primitive one, to a optical imaging camera or a satellite, depending on the what amount of cost you can incur. But that is something has to be done. That is the first and foremost thing. And vapor recovery system for the oil installations. These are certain things which will go a long way. And so you have to work on the ground to do these things. And we talk about these things, and companies have to commit funds. They are part of their OPEX to do all these things and to have a commitment to do that. And I think a lot of, you see, of late, lot of thinking have gone into this. Companies have become conscious about all this. So it's a good thing, but we should learn it very fast, because as regarding the flaring, you were talking about, you see, we practice in India is not allowed to do coal venting. Coal venting is totally banned. But even if you have to flare, as a technical flare, sometimes you have to flare because of you can't do coal venting, you have to flare. The combustion is very important. So if you are not the combustion is not 100%, is very difficult. But even if 5 to 6% reduction in the combustion efficiency can cause the effect of emission by more than 300%. This is what.
Yeah, exactly. So the point you mentioned.
Yes. Right. So this is something which there are small things, but you have to.
Yeah, and the technology exists in most cases.
Yes, of course,
it's not a new
of course.
technology by any means. So I'm going to change track a little bit and go to markets and regulation. And Hisham, maybe to you. We are talking about now LNG being more than 50% of India's import basket, and the prices have been even as recently at $15-17 landed. So it's expensive gas, right? Yeah. So an expensive loss of gas if it happens, but it still needs some signals, because it's seen as a cost borne by somebody and passed through. Would markets make a difference? Environmental markets, because India is talking about environmental markets, so will make a difference in this particular case for methane abatement. And the second thing is that what role would regulation have to play? Because you can't price everything in or do everything. Do we need tighter regulation?
So let me take the second one first. We absolutely need tighter regulations. But the driver for that regulation is not only environmental. As you described, it's an engineering fix to something that has economic and environmental benefits for country and for company. One of the big challenges that regulations have is your earlier question about how do you monitor what's going on. And last year, we launched a satellite called Methane Sat. This is the most advanced methane sensing satellite that's out there. It can do 200 kilometer by 200 kilometer radius spread of regions. It covers 80% of the world's oil and gas production. And what this now gives you is it gives you the most accurate information of what is the state of methane leakages that may be happening. One of the advantages for those who are not familiar is, if there is an advantage in methane, is it can be sensed from outer space. You can combine this with financing mechanisms. So the world's going to need about $100 billion to address the methane leakage problem by 2030. Between organizations like the World Bank, etc., they're putting together a financing mechanism that will allow serious oil and gas companies that want to fix this problem, and you have the additional transparency through something like the satellite. One thing that we should also just point out is, why is a satellite important? Because the imaging technology that's otherwise there is almost always, whenever it's high enough quality, classified as military and civilian use. And so there are all sorts of restrictions in terms of accessing it. So you need a technology solution. In an Indian context, the satellite doesn't yet provide ability to look at offshore gas, but we're developing something called a glint mode, which will allow us by the end of this year to look at offshore as well. So absolutely to regulations. On markets, yes, you will soon start seeing far more carbon market activity on issues like methane emission, because it's monitorable. So,
okay, thanks. Bjørn, we are quickly running out of time, so one last curiosity from my side. There are technologies which are relatively low cost to implement, and then the payoff is almost like given. But there are others which are harder, including in energy. There are harder ones. So, and the methane pledge doesn't distinguish between easy and hard, right? So, do you see the hard challenges being taken on by the industry, especially with the coalition of the 55 entities which you talked about?
I do, but I think it's important to stay focused on the progress you can make in a cost-efficient way. And then when we have used satellite for a couple of years now, reaching out to national oil companies in Algeria, Egypt, Kazakhstan, Iraq even, trying to give them a helping hand to say, look, these are the emissions that we are seeing you're having. Are you able to verify it inside your facilities? Can you fix it? And the amazing thing is that we have been able to, through that dialogue, mainly detection plus engagement, been able to, those national oil companies have been able to remove millions of tons of CO2 emissions for less than $2 per ton.
Okay.
So there are low-hanging fruits out there.
Focus on them first.
And I think India is maybe, just said, you're not the worst performer here, but I think India is in a great place to help define the future on methane. And I think you should rally around this zero methane leakage vision throughout the industry.
Okay. Time is up. I know that we are going to be asked to leave, but before one quick one from any of you. What's your one single wish, be it from the industry, policymakers, regulators? What is that one single wish? We'll start with you very quickly.
India joins some form of buyers clubs. The EU does it, China, South Korea, Japan. All major gas importers have now started setting import standards. And that sends signals across the system, and it can be done profitably.
Okay. Ashish?
Yeah, being a zero emission company, and for the industry also, I can say this.
So aim for zero emission, being a zero.
We are aiming for zero on methane, and it goes hand in hand with the vision of affordability, driving out energy poverty and sustainability.
Fantastic. So great. Thank you so much. This has actually pulled the whole conversation together very nicely. I am really thankful to you for making this such a interesting discussion, especially after lunch.
Thank you, Anish.
Thank you.
Thank you.